Since the earliest of civilizations, we have made much progress. But that progress came with a cost. Our world has changed.
Systems checked. Ready to prime.
We're at Gamescom catching up on Civilization Beyond Earth, the latest installment in the Civilization series that is taking us, well, beyond Earth. And we're catching up with Will and Dennis here. And first of all, let's talk a little bit about what you're showing here at Gamescom, because you're showing off some new elements to it.
That's right. At Gamescom this year, we're really excited to show off the fungal biome. Now, you've seen our arid biome, which is sort of the desert world, and our lush biome, which has looked a lot like Pandora. It's probably our most terrestrial. But the fungal biome is really alien, and we really let our artists loose on this one, and it's really neat. We're also showing off some of our late-game purity units, so the giant Lev Destroyer and some of the cool Supremacy units as well. So it's a cool presentation, a lot of neat stuff to see at Gamescom this year.
We're also showing off some of the late-game leaders, too, that they haven't seen. We introduced Kozlov. So you see a Supremacy Kozlov with all the augmentation all over his head and the fabulous uniform that he's got on. It's really cool.
All right. Speaking of that biome, in terms of the gameplay, what's different? Because I suppose you want to change how people play it and mix it up with that sort of more alien biome.
The biomes are mainly aesthetic, but really what changes the gameplay is our map scripts. And we have a lot of these, and we've put a lot of effort into making them really fun. From the sort of multiplayer-oriented, evenly distributed ones to some ones that are really challenging for expert players. And these scripts are what determines where the tiles go, where the resources go, where the start locations are. So that's really where the gameplay is going to come from, is those map scripts. But I think the biomes lend a really neat flavor to each time you play the game.
That is, to me, perhaps the most sort of revolutionary thing, is just the fact that you're mixing up the starting point and that sort of thing. It's just my mind sort of I'm a little bit flabbergasted about it, because I can see so many effects of how the game flow will differ, because a lot of the time in Civilization, when those few first turns, like the first 50 turns maybe, set a lot of things in place that are very difficult to sort of change. But now you're mixing that up a little bit.
Yeah, we are. There's a lot of stuff coming into play that you didn't necessarily have to deal with in Civ 5. The terrain itself is one of the opponents in the game, the terrain, the aliens, because this world has a lot more, I would say, roadblocks early in the game. It's a struggle to survive. So you've got long canyons, mountain ranges, you've got craters, and all of these things are going to make it challenging for even you to get across the map, for example. Later in the game, you're going to start to learn how to produce hovering units, units that can float, units that can fly, and the world's going to open up yet again when you play. So anything that we can do to introduce this new kind of gameplay that people haven't experienced before is always going to be a win for us.
And one of our design goals in Beyond Earth was to introduce more asymmetry into the game and more flexibility and dynamism. And you mentioned the staggered start of each of the civs. They don't all show up at the same time. And just that little change has a huge impact on the game. Now, of course, when they show up later, they bring with them some more stuff to make it fair. But just that slightly different starting condition leads to a much more asymmetric type of game, which we were going for that.
And unpredictable as well, because you don't really know who's going to arrive late and when they're going to arrive, and with what kind of equipment along with them.
That's right. And in addition to their start time, one of the things that we hope to show real soon is our seeded start process. And this happens before you land on the planet. You're still on Earth, and you're figuring out what your expedition is going to look like. So for the first time, Civ players get to customize their civilizations, which they haven't previously been able to do. So you select your sponsor. That's your leader. And the leader comes with a set of buffs. And then you select your spaceship, your cargo, and the crew that you bring with you, the settlers you bring with you. And each one of those choices influences the rest of your game. They're all good choices, so there's no positives and negatives. They're just a lot of good things to pick from. But every time you play against an AI opponent, they will have made those choices as well. So even though you may kind of understand intuitively that, say, Reginaldo, for example, is going to be warlike, he may be different every time you play. He's a puzzle you have to crack.
It's very different from Civ. When you start next to Montezuma, you expect certain behavior out of Montezuma. He's going to play the same way, he's got the same traits, same uniques, etc. But like Will was saying, so if we're talking about Brasilia landing nearby, he might have come down with a powerhouse of production-minded crew and a worker to go along with it, and he's going to start very fast. Whereas you might have brought down an extra soldier, you might have brought down research-minded colonists. So each start's going to be different. Like you said, it's a puzzle to crack. It's going to be a lot of fun for the players.
Is that because I mean I guess one of the main differences between Civilization and Beyond Earth is the fact that you're not sort of tied down by history in any way. You have that creative freedom to sort of perhaps bring a few more interesting gameplay mechanics in that wouldn't fit the main series.
Yeah, that's right. And the mechanics of Civilization have been dictated for a long time by the historical context of the game. And as designers, it was really fun for us to go back into these mechanics and recontextualize them without the constraints of history. I think there's no better example of that in Beyond Earth than the tech tree. So that in a tech tree in a Civilization game is pretty linear. You start from the left, you work your way to the right. Everybody researches the same text by the end of the game, and in more or less the same order. But in this game, you start in the middle of a very large tech web and can research in any direction you want. And that lends a lot of replayability to the game and also gives you a level of adaptability in your tech choices that you previously didn't have.
That is very interesting as well. And it's sort of, am I right to assume that it's sort of, they lead towards different end games, or is that correct interpretation?
That's right. We have a system called technology affinities, and there are 3 of these, and they sort of sum up the philosophy of technology for each of your civilizations: harmony, purity, and supremacy. And they each have kind of a different take on how we adapt as a species to the new world. And you assume an affinity by researching different technologies. So depending on what you choose to focus on, you will begin to adopt one of these 3 affinities. And your whole civilization begins to change as a result. Your units change, your cities change, even the leaders start to change in appearance. And that decision affects a lot of the gameplay, tactically on the ground and diplomatically as you relate to other leaders. So it's a pretty core idea to this game, and each one has its own victory condition that you can follow.
I suppose another knockoff effect is like in Civilization you create your own history. That is the narrative of the game. Here you have a little bit of a different scenario when it comes to narrative. And how do you approach narrative in this game? And sort of is it similar to Civilization, or do you want to do something a little bit different?
We're creating narrative this time. Obviously, we have a completely clean slate. We don't have to worry about historic context. So through the quest system that helps little tidbits of story to help you go along. The victories all have a storylined quest system that you go through to achieve victory. Each of the sponsors, all of the people, they all have these unique histories written for all of them. Every unit, every building, every wonder. So it all contributes to make this unique story that you're going to go through every time you play the game. So any context that might be not there from Civilization 5 is created completely new, which is great. So every story is going to be different.
One of the best things about a Civilization game is it's the procedural storytelling that it implies. You get to make your own history of mankind. And in this game is no different. We want you to tell the story of the future of mankind. So our storytelling approach has been always to provide context, but not story. I guess that's the best way to put it. And we like to reference Magic the Gathering. The story that you get in that game is from these little blurbs on the cards. And every player of Magic the Gathering has their own picture of what that universe is like. And we needed to deliver context with our quest system and our tech quotes and the Civilopedia, but not the story itself. That's for the player.
I'm very excited to get my hands on it. It's one of those games that going to a game show and playing for a half an hour or 20 minutes really it just doesn't work, simply put. I mean, this is a game you need to count in the hours that you spend on it. What's left for you guys to do before you wrap it up and ship it?
Lots of polish. Obviously, we're doing a lot of playthroughs. The designers are just spending time with the game, finding out all those little things that might not feel quite right, that we want to feel right. If there's missing narrative or missing instructions, it's that kind of thing. It's a really good time because all the features are in there, all the art, all that stuff is just done, and now it's just all about making the experience as good as it can be before it's released.
We're having a lot of fun playing the game now that it's so close to ship. And I think we always consider our games at Firaxis living products. So when they're out in the wild, we watch how people are playing them. We observe and get feedback from our players. Our fans dictate quite a lot of our decision-making from a design perspective. So we hope that Beyond Earth has a long life and that we can continue to evolve the product.
So given the alien theme, was there any sort of temptation to maybe bring in an Easter egg or two from another franchise? Or?
Well, you may have to play the game and see, I think.
Right.
Ditto.
That's a hint there. Okay, thank you so much for your time. It's a pleasure meeting you.
It's a pleasure. Thanks.
Thank you. It's a pleasure meeting you.
A journey into the unknown. To discover a new world. A new home. A new beginning. For mankind.